Fishermen along the beach at the mouth of the river were casting cohos, and some of the boys had fish, too. It was far too rough, too dangerous to try to fish the open lake, so we decided to try a little surf fishing. We got our surf casting gear, big spinning rods and reels, and, well, when Bill and Ray saw this young his big coho, they just ran for the water. Nice going, kid. How'd you catch him? Oh, he says, it was just skill. Ray and Bill waded across the shallow river mouth to a sandbar, and I decided to join some of the spectators along the beach and take a few pictures. Just another fisherman was striving to stay on his feet while fighting a coho. Seeing all this, I could hardly believe my eyes. I've done a lot of fishing in a lot of places, but never had I seen anything like this. Surf fishing in Lake Michigan, and for Pacific salmon? Brother, what next? Now, netting a fish is easy, unless you get too anxious. Then you've got troubles. Well, what do you know? They got him, and I guess that's what counts. Hey, you couldn't buy that salmon from these guys for a $100 bill. But speaking of fishermen and excitement, I've never known anyone who gets a thrill out of the game like Ray Ostrom. Ray's connected here, and is he excited? Ray's the only fisherman I know who actually shakes when he hooks a fish. After landing a fish, any fish, his hand shakes so much he can't light a cigarette. Ray plays his coho carefully, and now Bill moves in to give Ray a helping hand. Oops. See what I mean about a helping hand? Easy, says Bill. I'll get him, Ray. And do you know, Ray told us all about it, just as though we hadn't been there and witnessed the whole thing. It's still too windy to go out on the lake. Lake Michigan is really an inland sea, nearly 400 miles long, 100 miles wide, and in places it drops to depths of more than 600 feet. Thus, it's nothing to put a small boat on in bad weather. So we decided to fish the protected Platte River. The Platte River near Frankfort, Michigan, is one of several streams Michigan stocks each spring with young coho salmon 6 to 8 inches long. In about 16 months after being stocked, cohos start coming back in the fall as big adult salmon to spawn and die in their home rivers. From Miller's Landing on the lower Platte, we boated slowly upriver. The Platte River is as clear as a martini, as translucent as the air we breathed. And even as we moved upriver, we saw zillions of cohos. Such a sight. Here is a stream averaging 30 feet across that's alive with salmon. And we're not somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, but right in the industrialized Midwest, in the heartland of America. Cohos ranging 10 to 18 pounds scoot all around over the golden stream bed. Ray and I rigged with small spoons while Bill piloted us up the narrow stream. We started fishing a promising pool. Ray made a looping cast with a small spoon, and just like that, had a salmon on. In these small rivers, cohos have things pretty much their own way. This one rips line off Ray's reel, runs upriver around a bend, nearly jumps into a tree, falls back, and Ray has to go running after him. Ray catches up and begins pumping the salmon slowly back. It's hard to tell who's happiest, Ray or Bill. Easy now, Ray. Don't get too excited. Finally, Ray collars his coho, a beauty of about 15 pounds that's already bright in his spawning colors. Cohos taken in the open waters of Lake Michigan are silvery, but once they move into the spawning rivers, they turn reddish black. This fish probably would have spawned before too long. Somewhere far upstream, he'd have teamed up with a female who had already prepared her nest in the clean, cool gravel. And there, the two fish would have spawned and died. That pool proved to be a good one, and just a bit later, Bill tied into a coho too. Bill is a veteran fisherman, and like all good fishermen, he gets a thrill out of every fish he hooks, no matter what its size, no matter what species, or when or where he hooks it. Bill is confident about his tackle. He knows the line will test true. He knows the reel's drag will not slip or fail, and he knows the glass rod will flex properly and take all that the salmon can give, and then some more. So Bill bears down. Soon I dip the fish out and swing him aboard. Attaboy, Bill. Later, we went upriver and visited one of the Conservation Department's salmon weirs. These traps are something to see. The Conservation Department put a dam across the Platte to halt the salmon on their upriver spawning migration. But side routes are available to the fish. These salmon press on against the current into these side channels and there go into traps where biologists can take their spawn for use in the state's hatchery program. Prime salmon eggs are fertilized in the hatcheries, and before long, young cohos are hatched. The little salmon fry, or par, are kept in rearing pools until they reach the smolt stage, when they're about 8 inches long and 16 months old. Then they're released in headwater streams, such as the upper Platte River. These young salmon spend several weeks in their natal rivers, feeding on nymphs and minute aquatic organisms. Then they move downstream and out into Lake Michigan. They roam the big lake, feeding on alewives and smelt, and after another 16 months or so, when they are 3 years old, they find their way back to the rivers where they originated, and they come back like these husky giants, only to spawn and die. Here are tens of thousands of spawn-heavy salmon, weighing an average of 15 pounds, filling the upper Platte. We marvel at the spectacle of thousands of salmon, Pacific salmon, Great Lakes salmon, crowding into a Midwest stream in hopes of doing what comes naturally. I wish good luck to every last one of them. Later at our cottage, we learned from Troy Yoder, regional manager for the Conservation Department, how Michigan's salmon program got started.
Well, it really started 3 years ago when we obtained coho salmon eggs from the states of Washington and Oregon.
Mm-hmm. And then what, in a year and a half you had them, no, 3 years. No, year and a half.
A year and a half, they were,
size.
right, 5 to 6 inches long, and they were planted in the streams entering Lake Michigan. And now they're coming back a year and a half later than that.
And
How big are they coming back?
Oh, they're running all the way from 7 to 18 pounds. And now and then, of course, a larger one.
Well, what's the average, your overall average, in the fall, late fall?
In the late fall, the overall average is about 11 pounds.
Oh, boy. Can't beat
A
that.
beautiful fish.
Yeah.
Troy, must have been a tremendous thing for the local businessmen around Lake Michigan here with this coho salmon.
Oh, it's increased business tremendously. For example, motels in the area of Manistee and Frank were all booked solid back in June already. If you didn't have a
Is that right?
reservation in June, you couldn't get one.
Well, there wasn't really any fishing here then. It
No,
started
but
in August,
they were
so-
booking for August and September at that time.
Are they coming from all over, Troy?
Yes, you see car licenses here from almost every state in the Union.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I know in my case, I'm so excited that I can catch a salmon in just a few hundred miles from my hometown, and I'm born and raised in the Midwest, and to me this is a tremendous thing.
The next morning is bright, windless, and clear, and it looks just like the day to get outside, to troll the open waters of Lake Michigan. We had spooled new line onto our reels, putting about 200 yards of 15-pound test monofilament on each of our trolling reels. A mile or so beyond the Platte River mouth, we settled down to slow trolling. We hadn't gone 15 minutes when Bill hooked a fish. When someone gets a coho on, well, it's coho a go-go, and all lines are reeled in. You've got to give the man with the fish plenty of room. When Ray and I got out of Bill's way, old Billy settled down to fighting his salmon. A hooked coho in open water fights much like a wahoo. One long, fast run straight off across the surface, a run that burns line off the reel. It takes a good reel with a smooth, reliable drag and a good, flexible rod to handle a coho's initial burst of steam. When Bill had his fish close, rolling on the surface, I took up the net. With the net held steady, Bill drew his fish into it, head on, and we had another salmon. Compliments of Lake Michigan and Billy Cullerton in that order. Bill removed the plug and kissed it, but I didn't think that was right. Don't kiss the lure, I told him. Kiss the fish that hit it. Bill's fish obviously was a female, plump with eggs and longer than our cooler. Some of our neighbors are into fish too. In decent weather, boats, big and small, cruise Lake Michigan to troll for cohos. None of these boats are more than 2 miles from shore, but for this and any other kind of big lake fishing, small boats always should be adequately equipped with life preservers, lights, and other safety devices in case of a sudden blow. While Bill and Ray trolled, I decided to try for a coho by casting. Schools of cohos are surfacing frequently, so I figured if things went right, maybe I could put a lure in front of some breaking fish and maybe catch a good salmon that way. I waited for a chance, and it wasn't long in coming. I swung around, saw the salmon porpoising, and let fly a long cast. I let the lure sink a bit, stroked it through the water, and suddenly there was the strike. I set the hook hard, but it tore out, and the salmon swirled away free. I guess it's part of the game, but it's always tough to lose them. We trolled the surface for quite a while without getting another fish. But we knew the cohos were there because now and then a bunch would surface and go greyhounding over the top. Fishermen get accustomed to seeing things like that in the ocean, but I'll never cease to marvel at the spectacle of salmon rolling across the top of Lake Michigan. Finally, we decided to fish near bottom. We were in 60 feet of water, so it would take a lot of lead to keep our lures down that deep. We rigged up with 6 ounces of lead and attached flashers and sinker release mechanisms. I rigged one rod with a chrome flasher, while Ray set up another with a bright red one. Flashers originated on the Pacific coast, and of course they help attract fish to the lure. Tied about 6 feet ahead of the lure, they wiggle and wobble, dart and dive, all the time giving off bright flashes of light. Ray decided to use a large plug while I selected a smaller one. This way we'd be giving the salmon a choice. A sinker release is a spring-type mechanism that releases the heavy sinker when a fish strikes the lure. Naturally, you lose the sinker, but you get a lot more fight out of your fish. Hardly had we resumed trolling than I had a strike. The release mechanism dropped the sinker, so then it was just me and the tackle and the coho. I pumped him in slowly, firmly, but why rush a good thing? I've caught a lot of cohos in the Pacific off Westport and Aberdeen, and I can vouch that these Lake Michigan salmon are just as strong, just as scrappy as the Pacific cohos. The coho made a last-ditch effort to throw the hook when he saw the boat, but then Ray was ready with a net and one long swoop, and the salmon was in the boat. About 15 pounds, Bill says, just big enough to keep. A typical Lake Michigan coho. The wind started to blow a little out on the lake, so we decided to go back up Platte River. This time we wanted to try it with lighter tackle, so Bill and Ray rigged their light spinners with 8-pound test monofilament. But me, I've got a powerful yen to take a coho on a fly. Every pool and hole in the river was alive with salmon. The Platte is little more than 25 or 30 feet across, and its deepest holes drop down to only 8 or 10 feet. But salmon stack up in those holes like sardines in a can. This was indeed a river literally stiff with fish. When we reached a long, deep pool, even before Bill and I got into our boots and waders, old Ray was busily casting. I decided to wade upstream a ways since I don't want to compete with a couple of spinning experts. One coho taunts Ray by splashing nearby, but Ray just ignores it. Shucks, why cast to one salmon when there's a zillion of them right up there? Bill's busy too. He casts near the far bank, reels his lure a few feet, and gets a splashing strike. Holding his rod high helps Bill keep his line away from snags. The coho runs upstream and around a bend, and Bill has to hurry to follow the fish. Big cohos hooked in small streams are nothing but trouble. Bill couldn't stop his fish, and now it's hung up on a snag on the other side of the river. He went right down under that log on the other side, says Bill. I started to cross the stream to untangle Bill's line, but that coho must have seen me coming, because he made a fast whirl, untangled Bill's line, and headed back downstream like a streak of lightning. Now, luck like that has to come from clean living. Right, Bill? Just back around the bend, Ray is busy too. He's tied into another big coho. Oh no. Bill's fish has run downstream and Ray's upstream. If they cross and get the lines tangled, it will really be coho a go-go. Luckily, the salmon are pretty tired out by now, so Bill and Ray are able to keep them apart. Meanwhile, I start casting again, and wham! Coho on. The fish takes off on a long run, swiftly pulling all the fly line and backing off the reel. I hurry after him as the reel handle spins crazily and backing line rushes through the guides. Whoa, fish, whoa! This salmon thinks he's a bonefish. He's getting too much line, so I apply more pressure. The salmon, strong as ever though, starts another run, and then snap. The backing line parts with a sound like a pistol shot. What a tough break, and that was some fish. Son of a gun. Well, I should at least be able to find my line. By now, that salmon has probably torn the fly out, and the line should be hung up someplace. Anyhow, Ray still has his fish. Ray takes it nice and easy, applying steady pressure, and the salmon slowly weakens. The coho is nearly helpless now. His sides are sparkling in iridescent silver, pink, the spawning colors of the mature coho. Bill has worn his fish down too and now reaches into the cool, clear Platte and hoists out a fine, plump 18-pounder. Hey, Ray. But Ray's too busy netting his coho to reply to Bill right now, and I'm still hiking downstream looking for my line. That line has to show up somewhere because most of the fly line will float, and that salmon can't drag line all over the stream without catching onto something. Aha, there it is, caught on that limb. At least I've got my fly line back. By golly, the coho is still on. Maybe, just maybe, if I quickly retie the backing line, then reel up carefully to where I can tighten on the fish, I just might. Aha, gotcha again, baby, gotcha again. This time you're not going anyplace. I didn't know it, but Bill had seen the whole thing. Well, if that doesn't beat all, says Bill, and he talks about my luck. Come here, big boy. You are one fish I really want. Like I said, I've done a lot of fishing in a lot of places, but never have I seen anything like this. But that's how it is in the bright days of fall, here in Coho country, where there are a zillion cohos calling.